Sergeant James Calloway had never believed in ghosts. Yet, every night, as he lay in bed, he heard them whispering. Not the spirits of the dead, but the echoes of war. Distant gunfire, the screams of fallen comrades, the cries of civilians caught in the crossfire. They haunted him more than any phantom ever could. James had served 3 tours in Afghanistan, fighting a war that, to many, had lost its meaning long before he arrived. He had enlisted after September 11th, driven by patriotism and a desire to protect his country. But war had a way of stripping away illusions, replacing them with harsh realities. The first time he had killed a man, he had felt invincible. The second time, he had felt powerful. The third, nothing at all. Now, back home in Mississippi, he struggled to adjust. The town that had once felt familiar now felt foreign. The people moved on with their lives, unaware of the sacrifices he had made. Even his mother, who had waited anxiously for his return, couldn't understand the nightmares that kept him awake at night. One evening, James sat on his porch, a cold beer in his hand, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of red and orange. The colors reminded him of explosions, of burning villages, and the smell of blood. He closed his eyes, hoping to escape the memories, but they clung to him like a second skin. A sudden noise startled him, a firecracker from a neighbor's backyard. His body reacted before his mind did. He dove to the ground, heart hammering, hands reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. He lay still for a moment, his breath ragged. Then, slowly, he forced himself to sit up. The laughter of children playing nearby reminded him he was home. Safe.
But it didn't feel that way.
Determined to silence the ghosts, James sought solace in the only way he knew, by helping others like him. He started attending a veteran support group, where he met men and women who bore similar scars. Some spoke openly, while others remained silent, their eyes betraying battles still being fought. James found himself drawn to an older man named Hank, a Vietnam veteran with a knowing gaze. "It never really leaves you," Hank told him one evening, "but you learn to carry it differently." James listened, absorbing every word. The old man spoke of purpose, of finding meaning beyond the battlefield. Inspired, James began volunteering at a local shelter for homeless veterans. He met men who had once worn the same uniform, now forgotten by the country they had served. Their stories mirrored his own, and in helping them, he found fragments of himself. One day, a young Marine named Daniel arrived at the shelter. He was barely in his 20s, his eyes hollow with the weight of war. James saw himself in the kid, the same confusion, the same pain. He sat with him, listened, and, for the first time, shared his own story without shame. Weeks turned into months, and James found himself smiling more often. The ghosts still lingered, but they no longer dictated his life. He discovered peace in the little things: morning coffee, the sound of rain, the embrace of his mother. And when the fireworks exploded on the 4th of July, he no longer flinched. Instead, he looked up, watching the colors dance across the sky, a reminder that he had survived. The road to healing. Despite the progress he had made, James knew the road to healing was long. One night, after another dream pulled him from sleep, he found himself staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. The man staring back was different from the soldier he had been. His face was lined with exhaustion, his eyes filled with memories he wished he could forget. He reached for his phone and, for the first time in years, dialed his old squad mate, Carter. They had fought side by side, had saved each other more times than they could count. Carter answered on the second ring. "James? Damn, man. It's been a while." They spoke for hours, reminiscing about their time in the service, the good and the bad. Carter confessed he had been struggling too, that he had turned to drinking to quiet the voices in his head. James understood too well. "Maybe we can help each other," James suggested. "Like we used to." In the weeks that followed, they reconnected, leaning on each other when the nights became unbearable. Together, they began organizing community events for veterans, barbecues, fishing trips, even group hikes through the Mississippi woods. Slowly, the veterans who once isolated themselves found solace in each other. They laughed, they cried, and, most importantly, they healed. A second chance. James also pursued therapy, something he had once scoffed at. He met with Dr. Emily Lawson, a psychologist who specialized in PTSD. At first, he resisted, unwilling to unpack the weight he carried. But Dr. Lawson was patient, guiding him through his trauma one session at a time. "You're not broken, James," she told him. "You're just carrying too much alone. Let someone help."
And so he did.
He talked about the guilt, the faces of the men he had killed, the pain of watching friends die. He talked about the loneliness, the anger, and the fear of never feeling normal again. Dr. Lawson listened without judgment, helping him reframe his past not as a burden, but as a chapter in a much larger story. Finding love again. As James pieced his life back together, he met Sarah, a journalist who had spent years covering the war overseas. She understood him in a way few did, having seen the destruction firsthand. They met at a local coffee shop where she was working on an article about veteran reintegration. What started as casual conversations turned into late-night talks, long walks, and quiet moments of understanding. Sarah never pushed him to share, but when he did, she listened with an open heart. For the first time in years, James allowed himself to feel something beyond pain. Their relationship blossomed, but James knew he still had work to do. Sarah supported him every step of the way, encouraging him to keep seeking help, to keep fighting for himself. And with her by his side, the road to recovery didn't seem so lonely anymore. A new mission. Years later, James stood before a group of young veterans, sharing his story at a military rehabilitation center. The room was silent as he spoke, his words carrying the weight of experience and hope. "War takes a lot from us," he said. "But it doesn't have to take everything. We can rebuild. We can find purpose. And we don't have to do it alone." As he stepped down, Daniel, the young Marine from the shelter, approached him. There was a new light in his eyes, one James recognized. "Thank you," Daniel said, "for everything." James smiled. For the first time in years, he felt whole. The war had left its mark, but it had not defined him. He had fought his way back, not with bullets, but with resilience, love, and the unbreakable bond of those who had walked the same path. He had won the hardest battle of all, the fight for himself,